Hey guys, welcome to the channel. And if you're new to the channel, everybody's welcome. We just ask that people be nice and courteous, afford people the very same courtesy that they afford you. And you can talk about anything you want. You can disagree with anything you want. So I wanted to welcome everybody. And I do have some headlines we're going to go over today. We have Hawaii being the first state to really provide VC passports, and that's kind of a scary thing because other states may follow suit based on the amount of people that continue to go along with the charade. Now, as soon as I confirm that we're connected, it looks like we are, I have to show you guys something unreal. Now, I'm working on this final montage for the Helix series. And that was a TV series that came out in 2015. And the image you're looking at is the logo for a cult in the film. And this is from season 2. It aired in 2015. This was 4 years before the spamdemic. And all I did was turn this tree trunk logo upside down. And in the branches, as clear as day, you see the word COVID appear. Now I'm going to toggle this back and forth so you can see this with your own eyes and understand that I'm not making any of this up. As I toggle back and forth, you can see the C, the O, the V, the I, and the D. Now, how can this be? Before this was even a named condition. How could this be 4 years before it happened? Well, the series is all about a spamdemic. It's all about world depopulation, sterilization, vaccines, and everything else. If you haven't been following the Helix videos, then you need to watch them because this is some of the most powerful evidence that these people have planned all this out for a very long time. Now, I've outlined this in yellow so you could see it. But when I click off of it, you can see that it in fact says COVID. Now I'm going to zoom in the different parts of this, and I will be putting together a montage that'll air over the weekend. So if you're not subscribed, subscribe and you'll see the montage with other clips from the series. But you're probably asking yourself, Casey, how did you know to flip this tree upside down and find the word COVID inside the tree? Well, those of us that are believers know how that happens. It's called the still small voice. The Holy Spirit whispering in your ear, telling you where to look to expose the enemy. Now, what good does it do to expose the enemy? Well, the enemy has an agenda. He wants to sink his fangs into you, which is what he's doing right now. I'm zoomed into parts of this. You can see it's a little bit better for those of you, the skeptics out there. C-O. Scroll over to this side here. So you can see the VID. There you see the V clearly. That's a V in there. There's the I. And the last letter is the D. So this is some of the most damaging proof that we have of foreknowledge and foreshadowing. Again, this image is not altered in any way, shape, or form. This is the original image from the series. Here's the screenshot right out of the series that I was watching. And there it is. Look, it's even on a wall because this all involves a wall as well. And this is from there's actually a tarot card called it's XIX, which is 19, and it depicts a wall as well. That's a whole nother show. But let's get into today's show and cover some of these other headlines as well. Let me pop back over here. Thanks everybody for showing up so far. And yeah, it's pretty hidden, but it's there clear as day. So let's pop into some of these headlines here. Now, what's going on? Well, white farmers are suing the government for discrimination. Why? Because the government is giving financial assistance to other farmers solely based on their color. Now, as a person of color, you would think that I would be happy about this, but I'm absolutely not happy about this, because all this does is continue the race divide. Think about how these farmers are feeling that someone could get a leg up based on their color. Now, why don't they just make everything equal and fair across the board? What's wrong with that concept? And who decides how much black that you have to qualify for this? Now, let me give you an example. Some of you have even said, oh, have accused me of not being black enough. My own black people. Even though both my parents are black, because I don't talk the right way or have the right skin tone, I'm not black enough. See the problem here? Everybody's definition of what a race is different. And all that policies like this do is create resentment between the races. It does a lot more harm than it does good. What we need is equality and fairness, not handouts. Now, here's what upsets me even more. While their policies continue to keep the races divided, the elite are not playing fair. I'm going to scroll this headline down so that the algos don't get us. But basically, they're having us at each other's throat and creating the racial paradigm. Meanwhile, the rich are getting richer. The true racism is not racism at all. It's the economic divide. It's the wealthy and the elite gaining more and more power, more and more land, taking everything away from black and white people, and all colors for that matter. That's the true problem that's happening. The elite class is growing exponentially on our backs, and the elite are not paying their fair share. Now, even Inspector Gadget could see that this egg stain case was handled inappropriately, but yet Florida clears the officials in the treatment of his case. How can this be? I mean, even Inspector Gadget could have figured this out. Or Get Smart could have seen that the way that this case was corrupted from top to bottom, and that bribes were being paid out. Things were being covered up, and he was let off way too easily. And this is how you know for a matter of fact that the elite are playing by different rules. They cover for each other, and it's bipartisan. Now, why do we keep trusting them when we know that they lie? Now, on this channel, we talk about how both sides are working together, the right and the left. Remember when Trump did this civil asset forfeiture? Actually used it to fund the border wall? Remember that? A lot of channels have been talking about this. Well, this policy is very unfair because what it does is it treats common people as criminals. And whatever it is that you own is at stake anytime that you break one of their arbitrary laws. Now, this could be something as simple as you had a warrant and you didn't even know it. And now all of a sudden there's an arrest warrant out for you, or fines could have been stacked up against you. You know, there's this weird, I guess you'd call it a scam that's going around where they call you and they say, you have warrants or you're wanted by the law or the federal government. And if you don't call this number, you're going to be in trouble. And I looked it up and it is in fact a scam. But think of the fear. If you have any kind of property, we're talking even property that, your physical property as well as land, it is under threat all the time if you break one of their arbitrary laws. Civil asset forfeiture. Now, this used to only be reserved for criminals, people that were like amassing huge amounts of property or huge amounts of possessions, and they got these possessions through illegal activity. But now You can have your things confiscated without having those things come from illegal activity, just breaking the law. So people are like, Casey, what do you mean? Trump and Bo Biden are completely different. No, they're not. Who invented civil asset forfeiture? No other than Biden himself, the architect of the government's asset forfeiture program. There he is there, a much younger Bo Biden. And he was the one that came up with this whole concept, the same concept that Trump would continue. And this is why I tell you guys, these are bipartisan efforts, a bipartisan agenda. It's just latent. It's hiding beneath the surface. That was a Freudian slip because it is the serpent. Now, let's read in a specific story about what happened to this particular woman who talks about civil asset forfeiture. This was just this year. I'm a grandmother, not a drug lord. Why can police take my property? It shouldn't take 6 years and the threat of legal action to be treated fairly. I hadn't been accused of any crime. I shouldn't have been punished. This was March 2021. 6 years ago, police showed up to my home at night in Massachusetts, demanded the keys to my car, and threatened to damage it if I didn't comply. They confiscated my car, but I'm not a criminal. In fact, I wasn't even accused of a crime. So why was I treated like one? Don't I have any rights? Turns out I'm not alone. I'm one of countless Americans who have had their property taken away under civil asset forfeiture laws, which allow police to take property if they suspect it was used in a crime. It adds up. There are so many of us that billions of dollars of property are seized every year. Unlike so many other victims, I decided to fight the government to get my property back. My story began on March 15th when I let my son Travis borrow my car. Police suspected that he was selling drugs, so they seized my car under the civil asset forfeiture law, even though I had not been accused of any crime. But I had no idea my son might have been involved in illegal activity when he was charged with a crime. 35 states have these kinds of laws on the books, allowing police to take and profit from someone's property without even charging them with a crime, much less convicting them of one. While civil asset forfeiture was originally designed to punish criminals like pirates and drug lords, it's average Americans like me who are now frequently targeted. So, here's the story on civil asset forfeiture, a bipartisan effort to further erode your rights. And make no mistake, this will be part of the land grab that occurs in the future as Agenda 2030 comes online, and they have to scoop up as much land as possible. Bo Biden wants 30% of America to be federally owned, and this will definitely be part of the way that they get that land. Let me make sure we're connected, and we'll keep going with this. Now, many of you had brought up the whole, we're going to call it Magnet Gate, and I need to just warn you about these kinds of stories. Anytime something is fact-checked within the first 24 hours of going viral, it's probably a hoax. And nobody's been able to repeat this experiment. It's pretty much one video going around. And stories like this are designed to make us look crazy. Because if you think about it, the nanotech required to make enough material under your arm would be massive. It would be like the size of a pea or larger inside and under your skin. Also understand that let's say the entire dose was full of metal and nanotech, it wouldn't just stay in your arm. It would circulate throughout your body. So you have to use common sense with all this stuff. Now, if you were to show me an MRI of someone's entire blood system, their circulatory system, and you were to show me particles of metal in that would be probably a much more believable story. But someone sticking a magnet on their arm hours after getting it, that to me sounds like a hoax. So be careful with stories like this. And because if it's too good to be true, it probably is. And then what'll happen is they're going to use these stories, and they're going to be the elite's benchmark to say, look at the kind of misinformation these people are passing around. This is why we need to take away their free speech, because this is dangerous. They're passing around fake stories. So that's what I wanted to go over with that story. Now, this next story is troubling. By now, you've all heard Bo Biden's tweet. And in one tweet, he basically created two classes of Americans: those who get it and those who don't. Now, those that don't are now excluded from freedom. Plain and simple. If you're not free not to wear a mask, and you're not free to go somewhere without some kind of credential showing that you got your sticker, then you're not free. You are now a second-class citizen. He says, the rule is now simple. Get VC or wear a mask until you do. The choice is yours. This is very cryptic because this creates two classes of Americans that were not there before. So, now, here's the interesting thing about this. They intentionally muddy the waters on this whole mask thing, this mask policy. Look at what nuisance is up to. California could lift most CV-19 requirements by the summer, nuisance says. Now, he's dangling the carrot, of course, once again, saying that California will do away with most mask policies by the summer. Now, he doesn't mention VCs specifically as being the catalyst to those that don't have to wear a mask, but you just heard the president. Look at this. CDC lifts indoor mask guidance for VC'd people. See how this message is different than nuisance's message? I call him nuisance for a reason because he just won't go away. It's like a bad rash. Let's read about what the CDCs are up to. They say they said Thursday that people who are fully VC'd are no longer have to wear masks in many indoor situations. The new guidance reflects evidence that VCs are highly effective in preventing serious and critical cases of CV-19. Anyone who is fully VC can participate in indoor and outdoor activities, large or small, without wearing a mask or physical distancing. Now, you just heard Florida's governor basically backtrack and say they're going to let everybody off the hook that was prosecuted for breaking these mandates. So that's a good thing. Let's hope this continues, and let's hope that it catches fire, that other states, hopefully southern states, will follow suit and create opposition to the guidance of the CDCs as well as the president, because that's true freedom. Sometimes freedom is dangerous. Now, I believe that all this danger that they're telling us is simply a lie. But even if it wasn't, we have the right to protect your own health and have responsibility for your own health without someone telling you what to do. Now, what else do we have here in the headlines? Gosh, is it Friday already? Doesn't even feel like a Friday. So, CDC officials make a breakthrough decision on masks. This is what convinced them. It says it's driven by specific evidence they play a major role in curbing infections and transmissions. Did I already just read that? So off today. So, these people are all over the place, needless to say. And they all have different science. So, there you go. Now, one thing you're going to see missing from all of their messages, despite how crazy they are, is that nowhere in there do they talk about the people, the millions of Americans that have already developed natural immunity. Why is that not in their messaging? Why are we not given numbers on natural immunity? It's because they don't want you to hear those numbers. Because every time you hear those numbers, that works directly against their agenda to get as many people as they can to get the VC. Now let's move on to this next story. Many of you who showed up to the show yesterday, remember that we were saying that by summer, at least one state was going to start to require these passports. Well, no sooner than we spoke, Hawaii just announced that they're doing exactly that. Now, let's read this. This is crazy. Hawaii's passport launched this week. Here's what to know. Fully VC'd inter-island travelers in Hawaii will no longer need to get tested or quarantined before hopping from one island to the next. Is this what they were requiring of people? This is crazy. I would want to be there right now. The Inter-Island VC Passport, which has been in the works for weeks, launched Tuesday. It eventually be expanded to include visitors from outside Hawaii. Currently, the program is only available to people who are VC'd in Hawaii. Those who participate will have to upload their VC record card to the program's digital platform. 51% of people have received at least one dose in Hawaii, and 40% are fully VC'd. Yeah, they're living on a freaking prison. It's like Escape from New York. They're on an island that and under the control of this whole program. Now, of course, their rates are higher than anyone else because they've been coerced into taking it, and it sounds like they're being forced to quarantine and all this stuff, just simply moving from island to island. So this is what's going on in Hawaii, and I suspect that this is going to replicate in other states, possibly even California. Now, these final two stories are interesting because I feel like there's a pattern between them. We have a brain disease at the White House, which is weird, and we've been following this story. We did a show on this like last week. And then there's another one in New Brunswick, and I'm not sure if the two are connected or related, but let's take a look and read these stories and see what they come up with. Now, we've been following this New Brunswick story for some time, and we looked at theories about how people might have caught this weird disease. We looked at wildlife planes that were dropping baits down to cure animals of rabies. They wanted to eradicate rabies in New Brunswick. This has been going on for a long time. But we found that similar baits were used in other places around the world, and those baits have been found to be causing kuru and mad cow disease type illnesses, the very same illnesses that people in New Brunswick are being exposed to, or there's like an outbreak here. There's like 20 or 30 or 40 people that have it. And you have to wonder if they ate some of these critters that were dosed with the rabies VC, because that would be part of the food chain, right? Then they might have gotten this that way. Let's read this update about what's going on in New Brunswick. It says a mysterious, devastating brain disorder afflicts dozens in one Canadian province. Now, this is really close to home. This is right next to Maine, just across the border. Alier Marrero is stumped. For years, a neurologist in Moncton, New Brunswick, has seen patients with symptoms common to Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, a fatal brain disorder that affects 1 in 1 million each year. But diagnostic testing for the rare neurodegenerative syndrome keeps coming back negative. More patients with similar symptoms have turned up each year, and Marrero hasn't found another case. Federal public health officials last year identified the cases as a cluster, meriting further investigation. Now, Marrero and scientists and doctors from Canada and around the world are playing detective in a medical whodunit, racing to untangle the cause of the brain disorder that has afflicted 48 people so far. 6 died in the Moncton area. Now, when they get this disease, it's similar to like a zombie-like symptoms. We've been telling you that a zombie apocalypse is coming. And this was one of the first signs of this playing out. It's all about neuropathic diseases. And even some of the people who got the Jabberwocky were seeming to exhibit these kinds of symptoms as well. It says those afflicted with a condition called the New Brunswick Cluster of Neurological Syndrome of Unknown Cause, for now, have ranged in age from 18 to 85. What's the acronym on that? NBC and SUC. That doesn't really say anything. Symptoms began in 2018 onward for many of them, but one case in 2015 was identified retrospectively last year. The suffering is immense because it's beyond physical. There's also neuropsychiatric and moral suffering of the patients that is only partially relieved by medications. Wow. An otherwise healthy 75-year-old woman arrived at Dumont Emergency Department last June. For months, she has experienced unexplained weight loss and what she described to her daughter as a trembling sensation. Is this all starting to sound familiar? Inside her body. Her legs felt heavy. One arm was shaking involuntarily. Sounds a lot like Huntington's that we've been talking about as well. Remember? We've been talking about this for months, you guys. The daughter said her mother is one of the cases under investigation. My mother goes to bed. What is this? At night and questions herself, am I going to wake up tomorrow? And if I do wake up tomorrow, am I going to be able to walk or talk? She said, because there's no answers. Nobody knows anything. There's no reasoning. There's nothing. That's because people are playing past the hot potato. No one wants to take responsibility for what may have happened. Now, a possible scenario is that they ran out of this newer technology of bait for rabies that they were dropping on wildlife from helicopters and airplanes. And they probably found a backup supply of the older technology that had been linked to these brain disorders. They probably started dropping that. And it's interesting because the older technology is only used in like third world countries now. And also India. India kicked them out. And you'll have to go back and reference that video in which I talk about all this. But basically, this more dangerous bait that was being used to drop on wildlife to cure rabies was basically discontinued by most of the world, but still being used in third world countries. So my guess is they may have used that as a backup supply and dropped it on New Brunswick. Now, I can't confirm that. You're going to have to call them and ask them. But this would make perfect sense. It would do exactly what's happening to these people. So, patients experienced a constellation of symptoms, usually beginning with atypical anxiety, depression, and muscle aches and spasms. They develop sleep disorders, insomnia, so severe that they sleep only a few nights a week or not at all, even with medication. Their brains are atrophied. Many experience blurred vision, memory problems, teeth chattering, hair loss, and trouble with balance. Some, including those in palliative care being administered strong medications, suffer from uncontrollable muscle jerks. Sounds a lot like Huntington's to me. Others have rapid and unexplained weight loss and muscle atrophy. Some have hallucinations, terrifying hallucinatory dreams that leave them afraid to go to sleep. Tactile hallucinations in which they feel as if insects are crawling on them. One symptom particularly devastating for loved ones is capgras delusion, a belief that family members have been replaced by imposters. Whoa, like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Holy smokes. This is crazy. Let me check in with you guys, make sure we're connected. We'll continue on with this story and then get into what the White House is saying as well, because they've got a similar story about what they think is happening to their people. All right, let's get back into this. The rapidity in the constellation of features is something that I've not seen before, said Michael Strong, a neurologist who heads the Canadian Institutes of Health Research. The cluster was detected by the Federal Health Agency's Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease surveillance system, which monitors for CJD and other prion disorders. It's a prion disorder. Now, I heard people talking, and some channels have been talking about prions in the VC, but understand that this cluster occurred long before the VCs came to market. So there's got to be a different explanation for it, right? They occur when prions, misfolded proteins, build up and cause normal proteins in the brain to misfold. Now, it's not to say that they could have tested the VC on these people, but how would they get it? How would they test it? I mean, unless they put it in their particular floozy shot, that would be a way that it could have got into their population. Maybe they did a test run of what they were going to, give all of us. So that would be another lead to follow up on. Find out what was different about the 2018 flu season in this area and what was given to these people, and maybe start there. And if there was some kind of prion connection, then you would have a connection there. I mean, there's all kinds of different possibilities as to how this happened. It says, under a microscope, the brains of people and animals with prion disorders resemble sponges with small holes. And this, again, is similar to Kuru. Spongiform. Michael Coulter, who heads the surveillance. I wish I could close this guy out. I think if I do that, though, it's gonna close the page. This guy who heads the surveillance system said it's notified of many suspected cases each year, but only a tiny number are confirmed. So there could be many, many more people, just like we have with the system of reporting here in the U.S. Very few of them actually become confirmed cases that they'll admit to, but there could be hundreds or even thousands of other people reporting this. We're only told about the 48 that they quote unquote confirmed. Now, what's wrong with confirming cases and not putting forward the other data and just only showing the confirmed case data? What's the problem with that? Well, the problem is it minimizes the threat. It minimizes what could really be happening. You should let people decide for themselves what's really happening. And also, the incentive is, if there were to be any kind of cover-up, the incentive would be for corrupt individuals to minimize the number as well. There's all kinds of reasons why authorities would lie to us. Maybe they don't want it to hurt the tourist industry. Or maybe someone who is at the top is at fault for this. They authorize the dropping of certain baits or a certain strain of a VC. You see the problem here with this? Do you see how them taking the power of reporting out of the hands of the people and only reporting what officially are cases, that is insincere. It's almost like a cover-up. So the system doesn't specifically follow up on unconfirmed cases. See, they tell you right there. The physician treating the patient is left to search for another diagnosis. So this is what's going on in New Brunswick. Now, let's see what's going on at the White House. And will be close to the end of the show here. Mysterious ailments are said to be more widespread among U.S. personnel. A mysterious episode that caused brain injuries in spies, diplomats, and soldiers and other U.S. personnel overseas starting 5 years ago. Oh, isn't that interesting? Almost the same time frame. 2018 to 2021. That was 3 years ago, but 5 years ago, they're saying that 130 people were also getting some kind of brain disease. Now, this is interesting because we have to see if this crosses over with the other story. Is there a connection? It says the number of cases within the KIA, you know what that word means, and the state and defense departments and elsewhere spurred broad concern in the Biden administration. The initial publicly confirmed cases were concentrated in these two countries and numbered about 60, not including a group of Kia officers whose total is not public. The new total adds cases from Europe and elsewhere in Asia. Okay, so that's where it's distributed to. Let's see what they're talking about here. Health effects and episodes overseas. Let's get a description of what they're actually experiencing. It says here, a military officer serving overseas pulled his vehicle into an intersection, then was overcome by nausea and headaches. According to 4 current former officials briefed on the events, his 2-year-old son sitting in the back seat began crying after the officer pulled away from the intersection. His nausea stopped and the child stopped crying. Oh, wow. So in the intersection, he experienced nausea. Both received medical attention from the government, though it's not clear whether they suffered long-term debilitating effects. Now, here's what makes me angry about this. Okay. When you or I report an illness or put a Facebook post because maybe your period's off or something, you're discredited. You're by the fact checkers. But when an official and a government person wants to report a side effect, I mean, think about this. If you or I said, oh, I stopped into an intersection and I got real nauseous, and you put that on Facebook, and let's say it got 1 million views, and you said that this was just after I took the VC, guess what? You would be discredited. You'd be put in Facebook jail, timeout, account frozen. But when they say it, they try to make it not sound so crazy. See how this works? This is what has me upset most of the time. The unfairness in this world. How people with money and power, they're listened to, but you or I, we're just nobodies. Officials suspect the officer may have been targeted. The episode upset officials in both the Trump and Beau Biden administrations, prompting them to investigate further. They have not determined who or what is responsible for the episodes, although some Pentagon officials believe that they're blaming it on Russia. This is unbelievable. Let's keep reading this, because there were other symptoms. As of now, we have no definitive information about the cause, and it is premature and irresponsible to speculate. This is like a non-story. If you don't know what caused it, and these are just anecdotal events according to your own definition of what's newsworthy and believable, why would they even do a story on this? Moscow has repeatedly denied any involvement. Okay, here we go. Some suffered long-term brain injuries, including debilitating headaches. The episodes, according to the council, involve personnel experiencing sensory phenomenon such as sound, pressure, or heat, along with or followed by physical symptoms such as sudden vertigo, nausea, head and neck pain. So some of the symptoms cross over, but not all. All right, let's see if there's anything else in here. Now, one of these articles, when we covered this last week, oh, here we go. In a report released in December, the National Academy of Sciences said a microwave weapon probably caused the injuries. Some officials believe a microwave or directed energy device is most likely the cause. Now, for years, since Blind 11, people have been called crazy for talking about the possible use of directed energy. And now the official story is that this may be the cause. Unreal. So, this is what's going on. There may or may not be a connection. Guess we're going to have to wait to find out. Let's pop back in over here, see what's up with you guys. Do a little Q&A maybe for a bit. Now, I appreciate all the stuff you guys send me. I'll use it based on what the Holy Spirit guides me to use it. You know, don't be upset with me if I don't cover what you want me to cover. Don't stop sending stuff. If you do send me things, please don't just send a link, because I won't look at it. Only because I get probably 200 to 300 links a day that people want me to look at, and I just wouldn't have time. I'd be looking at links all day. Wouldn't have time to do a show even. So if you send me a link, give me 2 sentences and or a timestamp that you want me to look at. Otherwise, I just can't look at it. I don't have the time. but it's easier for me to go, okay, this goes in this pile and that goes in that pile based on the couple sentences that you send me. So I appreciate everything that you guys send me. So that's cool. All right. Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, everybody thumbs up this video if you can. All right. Love you too, Betty. Thanks. The temple will be rebuilt as a smart temple, says Katie. Okay. This is really shaping up to be a question of faith. Okay. Now, God doesn't give us anything more than we can handle. The it sticker. Right? So, he gave us a 99.7 survival rate. And if our faith is so tiny that we can't have faith that God would take care of us at a 99.7% survival rate, then that means we have almost no faith at all. And that's what all this boils down to. This might be a test of our faith. I've had many other, I'll tell you guys a story. We'll end the show with this. It's a very personal story. I was 21 years old, and I basically met my first wife, and she was a little bit older than me, but we decided together to have a child, and that's my daughter, who's now 25, I guess. And there was a problem with the Down syndrome test. There was a huge problem with the Down syndrome test because the mother of my child got a call at work while she was working, Santa Barbara, from the OBGYN telling her that our child had Down syndrome. Now, I was 21 at the time, and I was still in college. And the first thing I thought was to terminate. That's how I thought back then. And I asked her mother, this is hard to talk about, so I'm sorry, if she wanted to terminate. Now, it was pretty late into the pregnancy. I think she was at like 3 months. Well, legally in Santa Barbara, you could still do that. And she said, there's no way I would do that to our baby. Now, I have to live with that decision, even bringing it up for the rest of my life. Because I even brought that up. So I went on faith, and I trusted that everything was going to be okay. And she ended up being born perfect. Now, she had a meconium situation where she was in intensive care under full 100% oxygen for an entire month. Couldn't bring her home. But this is when I'm trying to get across to you guys about faith. The odds that she would have been born with Down syndrome were pretty high. Much, much higher than 99.7%. And who are we as believers to just go and decide that we're going to take something that we know very little about and choose that over a survival rate of 99.7%? Who are we? What kind of faith do we have? Yeah, she's completely fine now. She's a healthy, young adult woman. Made me very proud. Believe it or not, she's the one who helped me start this very YouTube channel. I knew nothing about YouTube in 2011, and she was young. I think she was a young teen at that time. Her and her brother were horsing around and doing YouTube videos and little skits. And she's like, Dad, all you got to do is, get this program and go on YouTube. And so that's what I did. And so here we are with a reach of almost 200,000 subscribers across all of our channels. We have 3 channels. We got one with about 12,000 subscribers. We got another one with about 70, and this one has 100. So that little bit of faith that I had to keep her ended up being the catalyst for countless lives being saved through the Holy Spirit, through the messages, helping people to wake up to the deception. That's pretty amazing. I love each and every one of you. Have a great day.